Hey guys, welcome to another Tuesday Talks. I'm Joe,
I'm Connor.
And I'm Jono.
and today we're talking about Pastor Ellis's sermon on greeting one another. So last weekend during the sermon, he talked about greeting one another and how in his family they greet one another with a kiss. That was a traditional thing that his father did with him, and it's something that he's kind of passed on to his family and his generation. So I just want to start by opening it up and talking to you guys about what your traditional greeting is with, I guess, your closest friends and family.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the common thing is just, like, hey, how are you doing? Or maybe I'll handshake or fist bump, or if I'm feeling, I'll go in for a hug or something. That's what I usually do. If it's like a nice emotional moment, then I will hug and embrace. But usually it's just, a handshake or a fist bump or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. I mean, my closest friends that I go way, way back with, we typically end up hugging each other when we see each other, especially if it's been a long time. But otherwise, it's pretty standard stuff. It's walk up, handshake, fist bump. With my family, I mean, I think it's almost always a hug. We haven't really done the kissing on the cheek or the forehead since I was really, really young. I mean,
Yeah.
But not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just something we stopped doing.
Well, you did it. I don't think I've ever done that in my family. My parents might be watching, and if that's wrong, let me know.
Yeah, in my family, we didn't even like hug. So I was kind of telling him earlier, I didn't really have a close relationship with my family. There was no physical contact of any kind. So I think of like how I greet my friends now, and it's actually kind of like I've adopted what they do. And so yeah, I do it like a high five, a handshake, a hug. Usually we shout like a compliment at each other if we're across the room and approaching, just because it's kind of like guys don't get complimented. So I boost my boys' confidence by giving them a compliment across the room. It's pretty casual stuff.
It's good to do, though.
I think Pastor Ellis kind of talked about how it's a little awkward for us to, as a church family, treat each other like our close friends and our close family. So I guess when I come down to it, what do you guys think is kind of an obstacle for that? Why is it that we have so much trouble treating our church family like our closest friends and family when we're all brothers and sisters in Christ?
Well, personally, I think it has a little bit to do with a couple things. The first being, like, you're self-conscious, right? Like, you don't want to be that guy, the guy that everybody's like, oh, he's the hugger. Like, just go to the other door. You don't want to get greeted by him today. And then also the fact that it hasn't really become a culture in most of the 21st century church to be very physically affectionate, especially in a post-COVID world. It's really difficult to to find that line, that boundary where you're like, nice, cool with a handshake, they're cool with a hug. You don't want to be over enthusiastic or under enthusiastic. And
Right, and COVID actually emphasized it a lot because the biggest thing that stops me from like going up and hugging someone or just saying, really embracing that person is I just don't know how they're going to react. And you don't know if they're comfortable with that, if there's this boundary that they're setting. And so it's this unspoken boundary when in reality, they totally want to hug. Everybody likes a hug. So some people. So it is this boundary of you're not really sure what the other person wants. And when over time, when you actually create a good friendship and relationship with that person, it's easier. And so that might be a boundary that just takes time to break, but it is apparent in church with people we might not know.
Yeah, I think to bounce off of that, your post-COVID remark, right? Post-COVID, during COVID, everyone where I worked switched over to fist bumps.
Yeah.
And that was like the thing. So post-COVID, when that finally started to die down, there was this really weird transitional phase. And there's a really weird transitional phase where I'd go for handshake, and they'd go for a fist bump.
Yep.
And you that classic, like, and then you give up, right? Because you're, no.
Yep.
Or
some people
I don't even want to shake it. Yeah, or people go for
something.
the elbow bump.
Yep.
And that whole thing created, in my mind, the most awkward of dilemmas, which you don't think about for the rest of the day. Usually what you're thinking about is, wow, that person must have thought that I was so weird because I messed up. But you know that they're thinking the exact same thing.
Yep.
So I'd say it's that transitional phase that we, as a church family, we've all kind of backed away from it now, and there's going to be that weird phase of like, oh, do I give them a side hug? Do I go for that side hug? And it's going to be that weird, like,
what do you do?
awkward transitional phase, but that passes. So that's kind of where my thought process is, I guess, to kind of dig into that last question. I guess how can we greet each other moving forward. And for me, I think it's kind of just start going for it, right? Go for the side hug and just deal with the fact that, yeah, it might be awkward the first time. And if it's something they're not comfortable with, awesome. You get to go for a handshake or a fist bump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
I mean, the way you learn by trying, and you don't learn by not doing anything. So if you don't do anything, you'll never know.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, I think the best way for us to kind of move and grow this culture is to just start doing it. As awkward or difficult as it might be for you, it's just go for it, and somebody will let you know if they're not comfortable with that.
Yep.
It's important that you respect that, but know that it's not necessarily on you. Like, don't feel bad if you go for a hug and somebody reaches out for a handshake. You're learning. Everybody's learning. This is we're kind of restarting a culture here
Yeah.
after almost 2 years of like, hey, stay apart, don't touch each other, be 6 feet apart all the time. And that's hard.
Yeah. And it's more than just handshakes or hugs or whatnot. The new culture we're trying to reform is this like trying to move away from isolation. And a part of that is relearning what is okay and what's not. And there's a lot of fears that were built up over the past few years that people just need to like rewire their minds to learn and get around.
Yeah, I think so. And in his sermon, he mentioned that it's mentioned 5 times in the Bible to greet each other with the holy kiss. That's one of the he said the second most mentioned thing in the New Testament, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's our second most mentioned command.
Yeah.
And for me, that's powerful. That's powerful enough that it's going to be super awkward, especially for me, because I didn't grow up with a bunch of physical contact. It's not something that comes naturally to me. And honestly, it's painfully awkward for me. But I've seen the importance of it on my life. Like my buddies and I, we never shook hands. We never had that bro hug when we first got together or anything like that. It just we wouldn't be as close of friends as we are now. I was telling him I used to work at Costco, and when I go back there, I'm greeted with a hug, and it feels like I'm just coming to see my family, right? And for me, that shows me just how powerful that is and how important it is, because even to this day, I haven't worked at Costco in years. When I go back in there, I feel so welcomed by them, and it feels like my family, like I'm going home to see all my friends and family, but it's just, these are people that I worked with. Right? They are definitely not as close to me as my church family is supposed to be, and it's that breakdown of barriers. They've made the effort to give me hugs and physical contact, and it's just something that it's mentioned in the Bible because it's so important.
That's super true, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, another point from that is it's not just the church family who you need to like in this church building that you need to like give hugs instead of just like, nodding or saying hi. It's a lot of other people in your community who you're starting to grow and learn relationships with. That is worth chasing, and instead of just keeping things like in a general work environment, it's very much mute. But if you can take things to the next level with just learning who your friends are and learning who your coworkers are, that will help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, kind of following up on that, it's absolutely something to be used in relationship. Once again, similar to when we talked about admonishment, it's something to be used within the church family with wisdom. This is not something you shouldn't be going out evangelizing and just trying to hug everybody you see.
Yeah.
Because you have no idea who they are, what their story is, what they've been through, where they're at.
Right.
This is something we should start first by practicing and cultivating within the church, and then letting it grow outward as the Lord allows, really.
Yeah.
Definitely, I agree. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you want to watch the full sermon, it will actually be linked below this video, and we hope to see you guys again next week for another Tuesday Talks. All right.
Thanks.
Sweet. See you guys.